Outposters out there, how we doing? Sunday morning fun stream is right here. So we've got nobody watching right now, but that's okay. You can watch later, and that will also be okay. So what I am looking at right now is going through some of the fictional universes that we have in the movie and television universe. And I wanted to play around with this a little bit because there's some interesting ideas here. And going to kind of adjust this screen a little bit so that you can see what I am seeing. There's a couple of interesting franchises out there, and I'm a little I do not understand why some of these will not work in film, and really only the Marvel Cinematic Universes work so far. So I've looked through these various ones, and we'll see what you guys think. Let me put on there that we are live, so somebody will actually see it. So how you guys doing this morning? I was up till, if I sound a little crazy today, it's because I was up till 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to fix some work things. So I'm a little tired. But the problem is that I'm also the producer and technical director of this show, and I am attempting to try to figure out how do I get all this to work and speak at the same time without sounding like a complete and utter mental patient. And also, I only when you toss onto that I got to sleep about 2 a.m. last night, it's not so good. So this will be my worst show, but that's okay. Also, if you want to join, let me see. Yep, I have Skype up. So we'll say around 12 or so Central Time, or whenever I get close, we'll look. But if you guys want to join the show and start discussing what I'm talking about, feel free. But we would love to have you here. So anyway, stream is up. We're ready to go. Please feel free to to join in. Let me go ahead and put a link into that because that is not enough just saying I am live. Copy. Edit. And paste. Look at that. I can still work this thing somewhat. But it'll stand out a little bit more that way. Maybe. Drunk Yoda. Okay, tomorrow, Jesus, I've been... Okay, Rowdy. You're supposed to be here to help me wreck. But that's okay. So, let me get back to open broadcast here. Too many screens is the problem. All right, so these are the various universes that are available out there in the film universe. So, going through a few of these, we have the Universal Monsters. Now, the Universal Monsters started in 1931 and went through the 50s, and they included the Hunchback of Notre Dame. The Phantom of the Opera, believe it or not. But really, it didn't probably start until Dracula came out in 31. And then you had the Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Bride of Frankenstein, Werewolf of London, Dracula's Daughter, and Son of Frankenstein. And then, as you might imagine, many of these things started to kind of go out of control. In the 40s, you had The Invisible Man Returns, you had The Mummy's Hand. I haven't seen most of these myself, so I really couldn't tell you how good or how bad most of them are. But I do know that by the end of the 40s, Abbott and Costello were a part of this whole thing. So they were really reaching, trying to figure out how to make these continue to work. And they met Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, and the Mummy. I don't know how many of these also came together in like maybe an Avengers kind of thing. I would say that the big one that came out after in the 50s that was actually somewhat taken seriously was probably the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, of course, Universal tried to bring this back, and they did it with the Dark Universe, and I think we all know how that turned out. They did do an aborted attempt at a universe with Dracula Untold, and that was with Luke Evans. And I saw that. I thought it was pretty bad, but it did have that where he ended up in the present day, and it clearly looked like they were setting up a sequel, but it just didn't come around very long. So then they tried again, and they did The Mummy with oh, for God's sakes, dogs. So they did The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and that was so god awful. I don't know what they were thinking. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing good in there is Sophia Boutella, who is pretty hot, but it just didn't work. So then they were going to have the Bride of Frankenstein. They were going to have Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man, Javier Bardem as Frankenstein, Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And, I mean, you could see that this wasn't going to work. You had Kupp, you had Kurtzman involved. I mean, you had the usual failures. So it didn't surprise me that that didn't work. So they decided to return to more standalone movies. And so the first one they did was The Invisible Man, and that was on this February, which I didn't hate. I actually kind of like that movie. A lot of people say, well, it's a Whammon movie and that kind of thing, and I can understand that in this day and age. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't put it past them. Actually, that's what they were going for, but they seem to have at least a little bit more subtlety in it, and it felt more to me like one of those older movies that they did in the '90s, like Julia Roberts one where Sleeping with the Enemy, and there was a lot of those Lifetime movies, and I don't know. I guess it felt kind of quaint to me. So that's something. So that was the Universal, the Universal monster movies. So then they went. Then another one that was big was the Toho ones, and those started in '54, and those of course were Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, Baragon, and Manda. Which I don't even remember. Manda. Oh, the big snake. Okay, I remember him. Baragon was, I don't know what you call him, like a rhino dino. And of course, Mothra, Rodan, and Godzilla. Everybody remembers them. And then guys like Mechagodzilla and all of those. Started out strong with Rocky, then it immediately devolved into just kind of kids' fare. And not that I mean, I loved them. They are campy, they are weird, they're man in suit stuff, and they're a lot of fun. Believe it or not, the Toho universe only went to 75, and then I think they rebooted it with Heisei Godzilla, and that was in 84. I remember Godzilla 85. I don't know if Toho is doing new stuff or where we're at now. They got the monster verse in America, which is Godzilla and King Kong, and that had Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then I think they've got one more coming, Godzilla versus King Kong. That one had Mothra in it and some of the other monsters. Honestly, it's a lot of CGI and a lot of gloss and not a lot of charm or fun. I would rather watch those old Toho movies than I would these things. So, chat is going, so please feel free to throw your opinions there, and I'll read them as I go. So, then you get to Alien versus Predator. That is a universe. They consider it a universe because the Alien and the Predator movies are apparently tied together. I find that a very loose, kind of seat of your pants kind of universe. It's like, well, we have the aliens, we have the Predator. Hey, that one guy wrote a comic, let's put them together and make a really bad movie, which is what they did. And then they said, that one wasn't bad enough, let's make another. And it was also bad. So, and then they kind of brought back Alien with Covenant and, of course, Prometheus. And those are just too far up their own ass to be enjoyable in any way. So I feel like that universe has petered itself out. At least I hope it has. Freddy versus Jason. So Friday the 13th and the Freddy movies are apparently in the same universe. That's a universe. Let's face it, that would be one hellish universe, man. and not just because of the monsters running around, because all the parents are shit. And sex will get you killed. Full Moon features. This included Demonic Toys, Puppet Master, Doll Man, and Bad Channels. I don't know much about those. I've always wanted to see Doll Man. I don't know why, but I never have, and I may have to give some of those a try. Then the View Askew-niverse. You got to give. I would say. Good old Kevin Smith, he made something that worked pretty well. And I think his first few movies, I really liked Clerks. I really love Clerks 2. And I was very happy to see that they're doing a Clerks 3. I don't recall much about Mallrats, but I don't recall that I do recall that I didn't really enjoy it that much. I mean, it was fine. I think Chasing Amy is really overrated, and and mostly it's just them screaming at each other, and I don't see the appeal. I don't see why it's such a big deal. Then you've got Dogma, which I guess at the time, just pissing off Christians at the time, I get it. I get why they were so upset, but now it just kind of looks. I don't know. It doesn't. It does. It feels like kicking people when they're down when you watch it now, given where we're at now, and that the new crazy Christians are really the far left who don't listen or read or understand anything. Then they just go with their tribe, just like back then the Christians said, if it's in the Bible, it's real, and I feel like, and I know that's not all together true, but I feel like for the most part, Christians have kind of backed off. You don't have many of those televangelists and that kind of stuff anymore. And most Christians have kind of gotten with the program and are more on the side of free speech and that sort of thing. And they seem to have learned their lesson. Maybe it's a generational thing. But and of course there are the nuts out there. There always are. But as compared to, say, Islam, which is, not the majority, not all, but certainly has far more of that kind of attitude and is far more damaging than anything the Christians ever did. So when I watch Dogma, now it feels like, it just feels really out of date or dated and a product of its time that is trying to speak out against something that isn't really a thing anymore. And to be fair, it was movies like Dogma and some of these others that brought that about, and I think that's overall a good thing. I think it's a good thing that generally, and I know not all, I'm sure you guys got a story where you say, well, this Christian asshole did this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, I'm sure there's still plenty out there, but for the most part, they're much better and easier to live with, and they're generally more on the side of rationality than the left now. So I guess I'll give it props for that. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is just, I don't know. I put it there almost with something like a Police Academy movie. I mean, it's okay. Doesn't make me laugh that much. It's fine. I did recently see the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, which I don't know if you even knew it was out or that it had come out. Sometime in late 2019. It kind of was a blip on the radar. I don't think anybody really did much with it. And it's pretty... I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. It does a pretty good job of being a reboot or a remake or a soft reboot and then making fun of soft reboots the whole time. But it still has something to say about, as the Gen X has grown up and become fathers themselves, become parents themselves. That's kind of, it revolves around that a little bit, but there's a lot of callbacks to crap. Kevin Smith pretty much shreds himself in it, which I appreciated. And even if not every joke landed, I feel like at least they kind of gave it some, they kind of had some fun with it. So I like that. And, I'm weird that way. I apologize. I wasn't running this in the background. I've got not enough screens and too many things to look at. The Ring universe. I mean, okay, sure. The Unbreakable universe. That was kind of a universe that we weren't expecting, and it's really only 3 films. It's Unbreakable, of course, and then there's Split, and then there's Glass. And Split was fine. I thought it was pretty good. I love Unbreakable. I think Unbreakable is a great superhero film that does not follow anything of the superhero genre other than the very broad strokes. Glass, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people like Glass. A lot of people hate Glass. I do think it has some problems. I think the idea that he couldn't get up out of a puddle was a little... I mean, I get that's his kryptonite or whatever, but I don't know. It didn't feel authentic as a way of doing that. Putting him in something that would have drowned him or something would have been a little bit more. I could have done that a little bit more if they shot some water on him and then. But just drowning him in a puddle, I get what they were going for, but it didn't work. And then, but I don't know. I feel like it was a hell of a good swing, and maybe a foul ball or a blooper down first instead of a home run. So, I don't hate it. I just don't think it quite. He didn't quite get it out of the park. In fact, he was I say he didn't get out of the park. Like I said, I think it was a bloop single, but he tried to get it out of the park. And okay, I appreciate effort, and certainly he has a lot. Shalman has a lot of passion invested in that universe. So you got to give him some credit for that. Then, of course, we get to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We all know how that's been. We all know that it's very, very popular. We all know. We've all seen it. I don't have to go into a lot of depth about that. And then finally, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back has a good soundtrack. I'm going to take your word for it there, Kim. I don't remember. I haven't seen it in so long. I think most of the View Askew have a pretty good soundtrack, but it's kind of hard to tell. I just, my memory. I'm getting old. That's what happens. Then we get to the DC Extended Universe, and we all know how that's turned out. I think uneven is being charitable. Right now, I would say that Shazam is the best of them. A lot of people say Wonder Woman, but I think Wonder Woman really drops the ball in the climax, where it's just, it's a big CGI fight, and you don't feel like I couldn't get into the final act. Whereas I feel Shazam stuck the landing and did it all the way through, and it wasn't dark or dreary. It was fun, and it was light, and there was some joy in it. And you can't say that really. Well, you could say that maybe about Wonder Woman, but the rest of them, Aquaman, my problem with Aquaman is that it was so predictable. Every beat, every joke was telegraphed. Everything that they thought was going to subvert an expectation did not. And I just didn't feel like it was worth a damn. So you can disagree with me all you want. I mean, lots of people. I mean, Aquaman probably made the most money of all of them, I think, or close to it. Man of Steel, God, so bad. Batman v Superman, worse. Martha. Suicide Squad, really bad. And then Justice League was just there. I mean, it just was boring. It was very pedestrian. And of course, we all know the problems with that. And we keep hearing about the Snyder Cut. I was like, Snyder made the first two. They sucked. Why do you think that the Snyder Cut of Justice League is going to be this amazing thing? It's going to be terrible. This is Zack Snyder we're talking about here. He hasn't made that many good movies. And he really mishandled these characters. He doesn't understand these characters. So no, I don't have any faith that this Snyder Cut of Justice League will be anything more than a weird curiosity of bad filmmaking. Birds of Prey. The longer I think about that, and I gave it a reasonably good review, but the more I think about that, the more I look into it, and I've read some other reviews and kind of changed my mind on a lot of that. So I'm not really impressed with it. So those are what they would categorize. Now this is Wikipedia, so take it all with a grain of salt. Then you get into some that have a common origin, but then they have spin-offs. do you really want to count those as shared universes or not? For instance, is the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, does Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter, is that, or is that just a continuation and a prequel? I kind of find it odd. One thing they didn't list in here was the Star Wars universe. Again, that's an interesting one. Does the Star Wars universe, is it? Would you consider, because you do have things like, well, you have Rogue One, you have the Solo. Of course, you have the sequel trilogy, the original trilogy, and the prequel trilogy. And then you got things like the Mandalorian and everything. So would you call it a shared universe? It feels like, because it feels more like the Wizarding World to me, where things happen within it, but I don't feel like it's the same as when you're setting something on Earth and you have these various different things like you do with the MCU and things like that, where you have very specific things. But you could probably count it. It's interesting that they didn't do it. They didn't put it in there. Some of these other ones with common origin, Rocky, because you got Rocky and Creed, The Mummy, which has the Scorpion King, X-Men, you got Wolverine, you got Deadpool, and of course the X-Men movies themselves, the First Class movies. So, yeah, I think that counts. The Lord of the Rings, which includes The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, I don't feel like that's more of a shared universe. I think that's just 6 movies in the same story. And those have been around for a while. It's just that The Hobbit should have been one movie. They called a prelude to The Lord of the Rings, which is exactly how Tolkien put it. So, common origin, that seems reasonable. We went over the Wizarding World. Cars, which has cars and planes. I didn't even know that. Despicable Me, which includes Minions. Yeah, I think we're reaching. Conjuring universe, that includes Conjuring, Annabelle, The Nun, and The Curse of La Llorona. And then, of course, the other Conjuring movies. So I feel like you could put that in a shared universe. I feel like there's enough differences going on there, and they keep branching out. I think you could put that in a shared universe. And then the Lego movies, the Lego Batman movie, and the Lego Ninjago movie. Is the Lego Ninjago movie part of those two? I haven't watched it. It felt like it was its own deal, so I don't know. Now, I wanted to go a little bit over the television universes. Now, there's not that many that are that interesting, or many that you may have known about, but there's a couple here I wanted to go through that I thought was interesting. One, I didn't know that all of the family universe was so big. We had All in the Family, Jeffersons, French Prince of Bel-Air, Medea Family series. Now, maybe these are just Norman Lear, Tyler Perry, Quincy Jones series, and others, but they count these as all a part of a shared universe. Tyler Perry's House of Pain, Love Thy Neighbor, The Pains, Meet the Browns, Maude, Good Times, Mr. Dugan, Hanging In, Archie Bunker's Place, 704 Hauser, Checking In, Gloria, Blossom, Out All Night, In the House, Different Strokes, Facts of Life, and Hello Larry. So some of those I knew they were related within themselves, but I didn't know they were all part of this. And I'll get into that later, but it's interesting how there's a theory out there that there's a whole lot of TV, maybe 90% of TV, at least in the 70s and 80s, that's all related to each other, and some of the 90s too. So then you get to the Cheers universe, and you have Cheers, Wings, Frasier, The Tortellis, The John Larroquette Show, Seinfeld, Mad About You, Friends, Joey, How I Met Your Mother, Caroline in the City, and The Single Guy. Now, it would appear that the Cheers ones and the Seinfeld ones would be separate, except for the fact that Cheers crossed over with St. Elsewhere. And St. Elsewhere is in the Law and Order universe. So, the Law and Order universe included Law and Order, Exiled, a Law and Order movie, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, Law and Order Criminal Intent, Law and Order Trial by Jury, Law and Order Los Angeles, Homicide: Life on the Streets, St. Elsewhere, New York Undercover, Deadline, Conviction, In Plain Sight, Joe, the Chicago franchise, which is Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med, Chicago Justice. So Law & Order debuted in 1990, but its inclusion of John Munch connected it to Homicide, Life on the Street, who was played by Richard Belzer. He played Munch in so many things. That in turn connected it to the earlier show St. Elsewhere, so it's in that universe. And so if you have the Norman Lear stuff, the St. Elsewhere stuff, and the Law & Order stuff, all of that is part of what they call the Tommy Westphall universe. Now, Tommy Westphall was a kid who, let me bring it up here. I know I got it here. Here it is. Tommy Westphall was an autistic kid, played an increased role in the St. Elsewhere final episode, the last one, where one interpretation of the finale is that the entire St. Elsewhere storyline exists only in Westphall's imagination. So his characters from St. Elsewhere have appeared on other television shows, and those characters appeared on more shows and so on. The Tommy Westphall universe hypothesis argues that a significant amount of the fictional TV shows exist within a fictional universe imagined by this autistic kid named Tommy Westphall. John Munch was also in The Wire, so then The Wire is a part of the Tommy Westphall universe. Thank you, Skank. That's interesting. So it grows and grows. So, what happened was in the last episode of St. Elsewhere, Westphall just returned to St. Eligius. Is shown pondering the recent death from stroke of his colleague and mentor. Tommy enters the office, runs to the window where he looks at the snow falling outside of St. Eligius. An exterior camera shot of the hospital cuts to Tommy sitting in the living room of his apartment alongside his grandfather, now portrayed by Norman Lloyd. And Tommy's father is still being portrayed by Ed Flanders, but he arrives at the apartment wearing a hard hat. He's not a doctor. And his father says, "Hi, Pop, how you doing?" And the grandfather says, "Good. How was your day up at the building?" He says, "Well, we finally topped the 22nd story, and I'm beat. How's he been?" And he refers to Tommy. "Does he give you any trouble?" "Oh, he's been sitting there since you left this morning, just like he does every day, world of his own." He goes, "I don't understand this autism thing, Pop. Here's my son. I talk to him. I don't even know if he can hear me. He sits there all day long in his own world, stares at his toy. What is he thinking about?" And Tommy has a snow globe, and as you look in the snow globe, it zooms in, and it's the St. Eligius Hospital inside it. So all of St. Elsewhere was put together in his kid's mind, which means all those crossovers are also part of that kid's mind. Let's see if I can find a little bit more information on this, because it's here's the master list of the Tommy Westphall universe. I swear to God, all of these are part of it. 24, 90210, 704 Hauser, Adams 12, The Addams Family, The Adventures of Superman, the one with George Reeves, After MASH, Alf, Alias, All in the Family, All My Children, Ally McBeal, Alphas, American Horror Story, Murder House, The Americans, Amos Burke, Secret Agent, Andy Barker, PI, The Andy Griffith Show, Angel, The Ann Southern Show, Archie Bunker's Place, Arrested Development, Arrow, so that puts the whole Arrow thing in there. It looks like Better Call Saul, possibly. I'm not going to go through this whole list, because, we got Hawaii Five-0 and the remake. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in 1981. It's Always Sunny. I'm just looking through this. Leave It to Beaver, for Christ's sake. Mary Tyler Moore Show. All of this is taking place. This kid is a genius. So you get the idea. Now, some of these, I think this could be a little. Let's see if we can get a little bit better one than this. Grid and Key. Okay, that looks interesting. Oh my God! So if you guys can see this, I haven't been looking at all of this, but let's see if I can. The Grid. Okay. Holy crap. So if you ever want to look at this, homicide life on the street seems to be a large portion of this. And Saint Elsewhere is the other portion. That's where the cross. That's like the giant piece that brings it all together. So, I mean, you've got Newhart. Well, okay, so the Bob Newhart show is a part of Saint Elsewhere somehow. If you remember in Newhart, the end of Newhart, they had them wake up and it was all a dream of the original Bob Newhart show. So you got a dream and a dream and a dream. It's really crazy. So if you've never looked into the Tommy Westphall universe, it's pretty hilarious. Let's see. Oh, View Skeeter, I talked about that. Lake Placid versus Anaconda. Did you know that was a universe? Well, now it is. Thank God for who did that? Oh, thank God for the Sci-Fi Network. What would we do without them? Unbreakable. And then other ones I want to talk about in the TV one that I think are pretty substantial. Of course, the Star Trek universe, which has obviously been run into the ground, but certainly if you do it like I do, where you consider Star Trek through Enterprise and the movies that happen within there, the Star Trek universe and everything after that, which is really the Kelvin and then the two streaming ones, are not. I think we could call it a shared universe. I think there's definitely enough different stuff going on in there. And then another one that DC did do that was probably the as good or better of a shared universe than Marvel. It's the DC animated universe. Of course, you start off with Batman the Animated Series, which I think was fantastic. And in there, we got introductions of Zatanna and Jonah Hex. Then you get Superman the Animated Series, which, of course, crossed over with the new Batman adventures. And that's when they kind of redid his look. And you get Lobo, the Flash, Dr. Fate, Steel, the Green Lantern Corps, and Aquaman introduced in that series, as well as Supergirl and some others. We could also look at Batman the Animated Series. Of course, you got Batgirl and all the various villains that get introduced there. In the new Batman adventures, we get Etrigan and the Creeper. Then we get Batman Beyond. Batman Beyond crosses over with Zeta, and also at the Justice League of the future. And then you get Static Shock, which I hadn't watched a lot of Static Shock, but there certainly is a lot of crossovers with that. The Zeta Project is its own spin-off. I never watched much of the Zeta Project either, but it was part of that universe. And then, of course, you finally finish it up with Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, where you get Metamorpho introduced in that one, along with the various... there were so many heroes that got introduced in Justice League Unlimited. And then there was some feature films with that, too. You had the Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which I still say is one of the top Batman movies ever made. Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero. Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, also a fantastic Batman movie. Batman Mystery of the Batwoman, Batman and Harley Quinn just recently, and Justice League versus the Fatal Five, which came out just recently. So they are kind of dipping back into that universe recently. I'm hoping that they do something with it. But that's a discussion of all the fun and enjoyable shared universes out there. So, do you have any shared universes I missed? Anything you wanted to talk about? Please feel free. And if you are wanting to join me and talk about some of these things, please feel free. I got my Skype going. I'm Rationalist Yoda on Skype, and if you want to call, go for it. Otherwise, I'm kind of talked about all the shared universes and looking at your comments. So let's go over here. John Munch was also on the wire. Yep. Is this the Aldo paradox? I'm not sure about that one. Cars and Planes, worst universe. Yep. Although there is a theory that all the Pixar movies take place in the same universe over a long time span. You know, that is true. That is not canon, unfortunately. So it's difficult to make that absolute, but there is certainly a lot of interesting theoretical evidence. I'll tell you what, I will go ahead and look up that Pixar same universe. There we go. The Pixar theory. It's got its own deal. So you are currently viewing them in okay. Enter the Pixar universe. The Incredibles. So the superheroes maintained order in the world, but Buddy, a wannabe superhero, created two things for the demise of superpowered humans: self-serving AI bots like the Omnidroid and the high-tech zero-point energy, electromagnetic energy that exists in a vacuum. This is the pivotal moment where we see machines eradicating their only threats, supers. Eventually, toys start to absorb and draw their powers from zero-point energy, unseen energy in wavelengths. Okay, and that's the second page. Okay, the first one, it all starts with Merida discovering the will-o'-the-wisp, which is magic. The magic turns her mother into a bear. This magic is why animals and the inanimate objects, so brooms and tools, behave like humans. Magic was utilized by a witch who mysteriously vanishes through wooden doors. Eventually, the magic from the will-o'-the-wisp would lead to the birth of superheroes. Okay, the first signs of life from toys are so we go through the Incredibles in the 50s and 60s, then we get to 95 through 98. The first signs of life are now present due to Syndrome's technological prowess. Toys, sentient objects, come up with a code of rules and learn that human love is another energy source upon which they thrive. These toys discover what happens to toys that are isolated from humans. In 99, they discover that it's dangerous for them to be isolated from humans. We start to see inanimate objects question their purpose in life. For example, Jessie resents her owner Emily for abandoning her. Resentment toward humans was not only carried by inanimate objects, but by animals as well. That would take us to 2003, Finding Nemo. In the ocean, we find that fish are incredibly advanced. They have schools, a network, and a freeway system. We discover that humans are polluting the earth and experimenting on them. Dory was one of the animals that was experimented on, which is why she's so forgetful. There are signs of resentment growing towards humans for polluting the environment, stealing fish, and caging them. Animals begin to be more curious and carry more humanistic characteristics. So then Ratatouille, Remy discovers his love for cooking and displays human characteristics. Some of them are walking on his hind paws, cleaning his hands, reading, and cooking. This is the first time we see personal interaction between human and animal, but it's for the purpose of controlling humans. Remy controls Linguini because Linguini does not know how to do anything. We see that Remy's rat clan does not approve of the humans and feels both fear and hate towards them. So that takes us to Toy Story 3, where the toys have gone through a lot with the humans. If you've seen this movie, you can tell why most toys have had it, being abused physically and emotionally by humans. Lotso Hug Bear straight up hates humans because they use and discard toy objects like they are nothing. He starts trying to take care of his own kind. This provides yet another reason why machines and objects alike are rated. I gotta tell you, this is getting fascinating. I'm going to continue because I'm actually getting into this. Carl and Ellie write to Andy telling him to get rid of his toys because they know animosity between toys and humans are coming, and that's why they are planning on living in solitude. Yeah. Carl is forced to give up his house to a corporation, by and large, because they're expanding the city. This is foreshadowing. This is a corporation that is cause for the polluting on Earth and wiping out life in the distant future as a result of technology overreach. Carl discovers that animals can communicate with humans, sees the bitterness they have. Charles Muntz effectively trains an army of dogs. This is the start of the tipping point between the humans and the animals. Years later, the uprising between animals and humans begin. Who do you think won the war? So now we get to the 2100. When animals rose up against the humans to stop pollution, the humans saved the machines and won the war. However, since machines helped humans win, it tipped the balance on Earth. Machines, by and large, had to send the remaining humans off into space on a ship called Axiom. All the other machines were left behind to populate the world and run things. But how do we know cars took over the Earth and not another planet? In Cars 2, cars go to Europe and Japan, which shows that it's the same planet as all the other Pixar movies. It also shows that there are no humans throughout the world. The world at this time ends up with an energy crisis as oil is the only energy used for cars. Alanol Corporation was using green energy as a catalyst for a fuel war in order to turn the cars away from alternative energy sources. The clean fuel could have been used to swiftly wipe out and decommission many of the cars. Alanol was run by B&L, which eventually polluted the whole Earth due to its use of oil. The whole world became unfit to sustain life. Somebody put a whole lot of effort into this. I'll tell you what. I got to give them props. So in 2800, Earth has become uninhabitable for hundreds of years due to by and large. The corporation took over. The world government started in the 1950s. Wally is the only machine left on Earth after it ran out of resources. He survived because he's fascinated with human culture and also his friendship with the cockroach, which help maintain his personality and fulfillment. Robots, machines on Axiom, having left Earth centuries earlier, show that machines develop a sense of purpose and human dependence on them. Wally is a robot Jesus. And he and his love, the appropriately named Eve, save the human race and start a new beginning on Earth. During the credits, we see the shoe that contained the last of the plant life. It grows into a mighty tree. The same plant we saw in Wall-E grew to be the tree in A Bug's Life. Insects have a longer lifespan in Bug's Life. Prior to Wall-E, an ant can last just 3 months. However, in A Bug's Life, these ants all survive an entire summer and allude to being around for quite some time. One ant says that he feels 90 again. This indicates that ants are sturdier as a result of evolution and mutated genes. Another ant tells Flick not to leave the islands because there are snakes, birds, and bigger bugs out there. They do not mention humans because there's very few humans to make it dangerous enough for insects to worry about. However, one kid did allegedly pick the wings off a homeless bug. Later in the distant future, animals start evolving into the dominant species. Come on. Okay, so then we get to Monsters University, hundreds of years after Wall-E. So we're talking 4,500 to the year 5,000. Animals started changing due to the radiation caused by and large. These animals evolved into monsters and accidentally wiped humans off the face of the planet. Monsters University was founded in 1313. This is dated using the monsters calendar, not the human calendar, which shows that it took place almost 1,400 years after A Bug's Life. At Monsters University, they're falsely taught that the monsters that humans were toxic and from another dimension. This is because the monsters were worried about being erased from existence and altering history. Monsters and machines didn't realize their mistake of getting rid of humans until too late. They eventually realized that humans were the source of their energy needed to sustain life. Machines helped solve that by letting monsters use doors to time travel to the human generations. This leads us to Boo. Sweet little Boo never got over Sully, became obsessed with finding out what happened to him. She remembered that doors are the keys to finding Sully. Later on in life, she figured out how to time travel using wooden doors and goes back to the source of all magic, the will-o'-the-wisp, and creates the magic to find Sully by using wood. Boo leaves evidence behind in Brave. 2 carvings whittled out of the wood. They were Sully and a pizza truck, the 2 things she loves most in life. Although she knows how to travel through time, she does not know how to determine what time period she will go. Therefore, speculation has it that Boo is the one planting Easter eggs throughout the Pixar movie because she's been accidentally going through the different time periods. I wholeheartedly endorse this theory, and I'm going to subscribe to their newsletter. Now, we do have some new movies like Coco and The Good Dinosaur, and what was the other one? Inside Out. And then, of course, The Incredibles 2, that could fit in there, probably no problem. But those other 3, that may be a little bit more difficult. But I like it. That's a good theory. I think it works. So, yeah, what do I know? Let's see. All right, so as anyone want to Skype in and have a discussion? If you do, just chat with me, and if you have Skype, we could do that, and if not, we can move on, and probably I will. It's been an hour. I've talked a lot, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun doing it. Something I wanted to go over, and if you guys have something that you would like me to talk about or you want to go over next time, let me know, and we'll figure out what we can what's our next topic. But I thought shared universes are kind of interesting right now, so it's something that's growing. I'm really not clear on why. I mean, I think there's more of them throughout history that have worked, and certainly they've worked in TV very well. In movies, they haven't, other than for the MCU, and perhaps you could say the original Universal monsters. But beyond that, I feel like it's either just a set of sequels or something like that, or it just hasn't worked. So, I would say it's just. I guess it's just a tough nut to crack, and I don't know why. I think the DC universe didn't work and should have worked, but it didn't because they were too much in a hurry to get a Justice League movie out because they wanted that sweet Avengers money. And they didn't realize that, Avengers, it was 4 years after Iron Man. And in that time, they had 5 movies. And 2 of them were a sequel. One of them was a sequel to the first Iron Man, and the others were introducing characters slowly, with the occasional, like Thor had Hawkeye kind of thrown in there, and of course Iron Man 2 had Black Widow. So there was some introduction to some of these characters and a little bit of character development that went on, and they weren't interested in doing that. Man of Steel had Man of Steel, and that was it. They had nothing in there to even hint that there was going to be a shared universe, really. Maybe a sequel, but not a shared universe. And then they do Batman v Superman, and then they start over, like they put in Wonder Woman, and they had the file of videos with all the other Justice Leaguers, and then it's like, and when was all the character development or introduction you got? And from there, we're going into Justice League. And Suicide Squad had really nothing to do with any of it. So it just felt really haphazard, and there was no guiding hand behind it. And now it's kind of late. I don't know what their plans are or where they are going forward, but there doesn't seem to be much. So okay, so nobody call me on Skype, rationalistyoda.com, .com, Rationalist Yoda on Skype. So I will put this as the last word. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will post this on the main website. And you guys, you have a great time. You have a great rest of your weekend. Oh.